intent does nobody any good, and it can be a terrible safety blanket if people, and it has been from the dawn of time, where people feel like, what do they say? We judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions.
Mm-hmm,
Ironic,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So intent can be very diluting. We think that we're on the right track because I intend on exercising going forward in the mornings to have a strong morning, but then I don't. So what good was the intent? It's like rent. You don't get to own the property unless you meet that intent with action.
So intent is like, you're just halfway there, basically. Anybody can come up with the idea. Now it comes time to rolling up the sleeves and digging in. That's where the work is, right?
Yeah, 100%.
The idea isn't necessarily work. It's based on a need.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I think I need this. Okay, great. So now what do I do to get it? Right. Is that kind of what you mean?
That's exactly what I mean. Because if you don't meet that intent with execution, then it was only up here,
So break that down into a sense to where in your work experience where that exemplifies it. So as an example of intent.
So one of the things that you and I are going to talk about today, which is really near and dear to both of our hearts, is communication, right? There's a right way to do it. There's a good way to do it. There's a better way to do it. And one thing that I've learned in leadership is it's not fair for me to think that my people are going to have the same standards as me just because I have them. It's not fair for me to think that just because I'm ready to win and plow through a wall that they are.
Right.
It's not fair for me to think that just because I know what the expectations are, and I've said them once or twice, that they're all aligned.
Right.
They can't read my mind is what I've learned. Right. So I can have that intent and it can be a cozy blanket, a warm blanket, but that's all it is a false security blanket, because until I communicate it to them clearly and simply, then they're not going to be able to be on the same page. And I'm basically relying on hopes and wishes that they think like I do. And that's not how it works. We've got to match intent with execution.
Yeah. So that's where the communication piece comes in. So like with what you just said, I always say, and we've talked about it before in other capacities, whether it's work related or personal, you can't expect you out of others.
That's exactly right.
Don't expect you out of others. And that's where we get disappointed because, well, that's not how I would do it. Well, exactly. That's how they did it. Because they're not you.
That's right.
And they are them, right?
That's
Not to get into a pronoun. I didn't mean to get in a pronoun rabbit hole, but I mean, ultimately it's, you know what I'm saying? I can't expect others to see things like you just said. Just because you're pumped up about a plan doesn't mean that they're going to be pumped up about the plan. You can't expect them to be until you actually get to that point of buy-in for them. And that's where the work is. And I think this is the reason why. So when we were going back to the whole Chat GPT thing, bro, like I just basically threw up all over Chat GPT. Like and here's what I mean. So I basically spelled out to Chat GPT who I am, what I'm thinking right now, and I wanted to get their opinion. Like, so in other words, if you or I had a mentor, right, sitting with us, and they say, well, tell me about you, Rocky. Tell me about what your thoughts are. Tell me about who you are. Tell me about what your vision is, and let's go from there. So that's kind of what I did. Yours would be unique to you. Here's mine. Okay. So I just put, I successfully manage a group of 8 and have developed a good reputation within the company and people leading in development. I would like to do more of that for the company, helping to develop strong, authentic leadership and communication. I have a successful background with over 25 years on the air and broadcasting that has given me a unique ability to connect with others. I would like to share this, and even if you think it would be of value to others, begin a type of consultancy. My brother is also a leader in a different industry altogether, but has also become successful, and we both share many of the same philosophies. We are starting a podcast discussing healthy leadership and styles. What are your thoughts on all of this? Chat GPT, right?
I love that.
So here's what it spit out, and this is where it surprised me because I was not expecting them to blow me away with the detail they did based upon what I put in.
Yeah.
This sounds like a fantastic direction. Your background in broadcasting gives you a strong edge in communication, storytelling, and engagement, key skills that many leaders struggle with. Your proven leadership within your company and your desire to develop others make this a natural next step. Starting with internal leadership development within your company is a great foundation. If you find success and demand growing, a consultancy could be a strong next move. Your podcast with your brother is also a smart way to build credibility, showcase your leadership philosophy, and reach a broader audience. If you're serious about taking this further, consider defining your leadership framework, what core principles set your leadership style apart, gathering testimonials, internal feedback on your leadership impact could help establish credibility, creating a business model. Would your consultancy be coaching-based, workshop-driven, or something else? Leveraging the podcast community and drive interest in your experience. And then it goes on to about structuring a plan. But when I go back to the one specific part that I want to point out, where it talks about your background in broadcast gives you a strong edge in communication, storytelling, and engagement, key skills many leaders struggle with. So when I go back to the conversation I was sharing with you that I had with, or the question I asked Keith McLaughlin, the CEO of Campbell Soup, about authenticity and can it be taught, or is it something you just either have or you don't? And he thought about it. And remember what I told you, he kind of went back to, yeah, I'm going through that right now with somebody who's been with us 2 years. He's borderline genius with numbers, but the people side of it is where he lacks. And so that's where I feel like you and I have a unique gift to be able to help. You're living proof of that, right? I mean, you started working part-time, right, at that store, and now you're a DM, right? And you're building other leaders who are emulating you. And going back to what you said earlier about the intent, well, I intend to build teams. Well, great. I intend to climb a mountain. So now what, right? So now it's about what the plan is. And for you and I, it comes natural. It's that ability to communicate and connect and engage, not expecting us out of someone else, finding out what makes them tick, to speak in their terms, to get their buy-in, to get their engagement. What are your thoughts on some of that I just shared? It's a lot.
Well, my first thought is, I know you know this because of how close we are, but growing up, you had a very important hand in raising me. And so you mentioned emulating and in a big way, Len, I'm a branch off your tree. A lot of what I apply, my first principles as a leader, I think the reason why it's so beautiful how full circle God has brought everything, because I think the reason you and I connect so much in our respective industries is because I've applied a lot of what you taught me growing up, and it works, and I'm obsessed with what works, and I get that from you as well. So I think that in seeing how my people respond to the way I would want to be led, that's how I choose to lead them. Yeah. Seeing the positive response, seeing that that what they do and how they emulate the tone that I set for them is such a positive result. It tells me it's working.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. No, it makes you what?
That's essentially it. It makes me want to just, tighten it even more and just go from good to great.
So how does empathy play in that?
I'm a firm believer, bro, in empathy without sympathy. I believe that you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes. Otherwise, you are going to be too out of touch to be able to communicate, from a high level point of view to their level, to be able to be effective. And the first time I ever learned about empathy, I don't know if you remember this, but I was a little boy, and I was in my room, and we were talking about our sister, and you said, "Bro, do you know what empathy is?" And that was the first time I ever even heard that word. And I remember you said, it's to put yourself in someone else's shoes. That's so embedded in my DNA now that it's a staple in my style of leadership. So I believe that you have to empathize, but I also believe that you have to be able to make tough decisions. And in order to do that, you can't sympathize. Look at Vince Lombardi. Look at some of the greatest leaders and coaches of all time that brought out the best in people. And they might not have, been very well liked in the moment, but that didn't last long when people saw the best of themselves coming out of them. coming out of themselves, it's like you would say to Zayden, you might surprise yourself,
Well, I think that you bring up a good point, because when you talk about the difference of empathy and sympathy, sometimes people confuse that,
They
right?
do.
And I think that in this context of leadership specifically, and you said you feel like you have to be empathy. There has to be a level of empathy. And I would agree with you, because how else will you be able to connect?
Yes.
Otherwise, you're going back to I'm expecting myself out of them.
That's exactly right.
How you're hooked up. So, when we're talking about those types of situations, I'll give you a real-time example. And I think I may have shared this with you before. When I first started, I had one particular employee who did not like me. And I'll be honest, I didn't like that person very much either. Granted, neither one of us knew each other very well, but our styles, our personalities, our temperaments did not mesh at the onset. And it was very clear.
Yeah.
So by the end of the first week, we were both like powder kegs. And so it came to a blow up point, and we got, it got pretty heated, and we got face to face, and we're like, listen. And then one of our assistants came out and was like, you just have to understand, this is who he is. And I'm thinking, no, he has to understand now there's a new game.
That's right.
And so we weren't getting anywhere. And so I'm like, you know what? I remembered one of the great lessons that I've learned from another good leader that I had the pleasure to work with. Said, get away, just take a walk, get away from that surrounding. And Absolutely. So I just looked at him. I said, let's go for a walk. And so we literally just walked. We walked outside and we just went for a walk. And I just started to ask him questions about him. I mean, I knew he was strong. Mm-hmm. I knew he was passionate. Mm-hmm. I knew he had a temper. By the way, me too. Right. So based on that alone, there's connection. There's a foundation for connection, because
there's some middle ground.
Yeah. So I wanted to find out more about who he is and how he came to be who he is. And so once we did that, we were able to make this connection. And I'll be honest with you, I'm probably closer to him than any one of my other employees. Out of all of my employees, he's the one who comes to my house for dinners at holidays.
That's amazing.
He's the one who comes to bring his daughter sometimes to go swimming in the pool in the backyard, come into a cookout. We'll grill some steaks, have some beers together. So, I guess I'm only pointing that out, not to say look at what we did. I'm pointing it out to say that took empathy on both parts, because he could have said, I'm not going for a walk, I got work to do.
Yeah, that's true.
He could have
continued some emotional maturity on his part.
100%.
And bro, that's the difference between, and I know you'd agree with this, the difference between healthy and unhealthy conflict. Yeah. And that is why the sympathy aspect can't come into play when you're in leadership, when you're trying to bring someone up to the next level of who they are, and they're their own worst enemy. How are you going to do that? They're going to defend it. They might not want to hear it. Ideally they do, but a lot of times they don't. A lot of times they'll knee-jerk react, get emotional, get their feelings hurt. So that is, you've got to be able to set the tone for healthy conflict. And that can be a huge blessing in disguise. But we as leaders, we have to maintain that homeostasis, because they're not
what?
That homeostasis, we gotta.
Does that mean you like men and you're a man? Or
that is not. That's not.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I'm ignorant to that.
Homeostasis is basically, keeping everything copacetic, keeping everything, at an even level where it should be. Yeah. So
level ground.
Yeah, exactly. So, we have to be able to do that, because the other party might not be willing to do that. So we've always got to remember that we are the thermostat. We can't be the thermometer.
Right.
But that will still, we still have to be, we have to have that leadership courage to be able to be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations that would be healthy conflict, but can turn into so much more if we route it in a positive direction.
Right. No, I think that you're spot on with that. I would ask this. So we're kind of focusing on empathy. We just happened to land on that, right? It wasn't a planned thing for us, right? What are your thoughts on, say you have a situation where you have a father who's a single father, responsible for 2 kids, has to drop a kid off at daycare. So he comes in late in the mornings, a little bit late in the mornings. He's, your meeting time is this time, but he's got children. So he's trying to, so now where does empathy come in on that part for you? How would you handle such a situation like that?
It actually is a point toward empathy, just what we're saying, and not sympathy, because while you empathize with them, instead of letting them pull your heartstrings because maybe this is a one-off, right? And if it is, fantastic. As a leader, we have to watch for patterns because you can't tell from onesie twosies, right? But patterns don't lie.
Right.
So in that situation, you have to be able to empathize because it's another human being. They've got a lot going on just like we do. And then we could be in that situation at some point or have been in that situation at some point. So we have to be able to empathize to be able to handle it in a healthy, proportionate way.
Right.
Otherwise, we might handle it in a way that's not fair to them, that doesn't show them the respect and dignity that they deserve, that will get their buy-in and make them appreciate where they work, that they will want to do more for you out of the desire to want to, not because they have to.
What about the optics that creates for the other teammates, the other team?
So
players?
That's a great question. That's it, because you've got what you do for one, you have to do for all, right? But I'm not a believer in.
Do you? I don't know. Do you?
To a degree. So let's break that down, right? Because I see what you're getting at with this, and you're on point, and it's tough to nail down. So let's try. So you've got certain situations where, if you were, let's stick with your initial example, where you give a pass to that person because of their situation. That is probably going to have some backlash. We'd be fools to think it wouldn't down the road when somebody else, the optics on the situation is they're the same amount of late, nobody knows the details of anybody's personal life because that's not something we need to be sharing. Right. And so you don't make an exception for that person because of different variables. That is what a leader, that's why there is no autopilot for leadership, because we have to be able to use discernment to look at that situation and go, is it the same? Is it different? Now, if it was the same situation, absolutely, we should do the same thing for that person and let them know, look, this is not something that has anything to do with your work life. However, because I know life happens, and because this is not a pattern with you, just do me a favor, and in the future, give me the courtesy of letting me know ahead of time, or maybe they did, and they did everything that they could, what they control, what they could control. In the second situation, if it's the same thing, handle it the same way, because what you're doing, I call it drawing a happy line in the sand. And what I mean by that, be it with team members or customers, you're always conditioning, right? You're always setting the tone, and much more is caught than is ever taught. So you're exactly right. The optics on that could look bad. So say they throw back at you, well, you made an exception for so-and-so. Why am I being documented? And in that case, I would have to, we would have to let that person know, look, this is a completely different situation. I'm not at liberty to share the personal details of your colleague, but what I can tell you is that it's not been a pattern with them. There were some things that were out of their control, so I was willing to overlook one situation. This is the third time that you've been late, and you're telling me that you just overslept. So if it was something out of your control, and it had not been a pattern with you, then you're 100% right. I would be giving you the same one-time exception that I gave your colleague.
Well thought through. So, I appreciate you sharing that. So I come at it from a different angle, but although similar, I would say that would be my fault if I allowed the optics to affect. And here's why I say that, because as a leader, part of my responsibility is to be able to get to know each and every person on my team. I have a unique setting. I don't have 1,000 people working for me. I know in some situations that could be an impossibility, right? But you still have a circle, right, of people that you're grooming to lead, So for me, I would say my goal, my job is to connect with each person. So, and to get us all rooting for each other. So if we are mindful of the fact that in this position, you've got an individual who's a valued teammate, people enjoy working with, they appreciate, they care for, they understand the circumstances. And you know what else they also offer? Empathy, right? They offer that level of empathy because they want to be there for them. And I want to be there for not just them. I want to be there for you. So even if there's something that comes, that's why I guess it's hard to adopt a one size fits all in everything. I think that there is a one size fits all that is necessary for basic structures. And so here's what I mean. If we're not hitting
expectations,
right, if we're not hitting numbers, if we have to, then we have to revisit this. We have to figure out a way to tweak things that we can do. And if we try all these other things and it still doesn't work, then maybe we need to revisit this, right? But if we can be productive and work together and grow and be impactful, then I think that's the goal. I think that, so part of that I would say would be my responsibility if I have somebody saying, well, you let so-and-so, because now that person does not understand, obviously, the dynamics of things. And then I would want to go to that person and find out the root cause as to, well, let me help me understand why it is that you're having an issue with this.
Exactly.
He's separate and different, and I'm not going to share his situation with you because that's really, frankly, not your business. What is your business is your situation. And because I care about you now, that's my business too. Because I want to make sure that you're happy and you're content. And that if there's something I could do to help make this better for you within my power, I want to try to do that. The only way I can do that is to act. But you have to let me know what's going on with you. Talk to me. Boom. Now I've set the table for you to communicate with me. So now you're not looking at, one of my other favorite leaders used to say, stop looking at other people's pockets.
What did he mean by that?
People talk about, wonder how much he's getting paid. Wonder how much she's getting paid. I've been here longer than they have been. They make more than me, and I've been right. Stop looking at other people's pockets. Look at your own. What's that?
It's funny that you say that because as you were talking, I was recalling situations that are relative to what we're talking about right now. And one of the ones that stood out to me was I had a team member at one point that got very upset with me because of the optics on what they were getting paid versus what somebody else in the same position was getting paid. So let me break down a little of how this played out because it's perfectly relevant to what we're
That's
talking
always
about.
Fun, isn't it?
Yeah. especially when there's the dynamic between the dichotomy of female and male. So now the optics are even worse. Oh, it's because he's a guy. No, I said, listen. Number one, you shouldn't know what that person is making.
That's my first question. How did they even know?
That's what I said. Well, they said, look, I know, but exactly, but I do. And that's the bottom line. And I said, okay. I said, well, you're not going to want to let anybody else know that you know what they're making because that doesn't look good on you because that's nobody else's business. Right. I said, I don't know what my colleagues are making. I don't care what my colleagues are making because I signed up for what I signed up for and the platform I signed up for to chase the opportunity, not to chase a buck. Right. I said, but just so you know, I said, it has nothing to do with you being, with male or female. I said, it has nothing to do with any injustice here. I said, when I decide what somebody is going to make, or when anybody decides what their employees are going to make, there are a lot of different variables that go into play. 100%. There's prior experience, right? Yep. There's different variables.
There's market variables.
There's market variables. What store they're at, and or what store you plan on putting them at. If they're just there temporarily, and what the level of experience and background, all these things, there are different things that come into play. Did they start in the company making $8 and some change like I did? Or did I recruit them from the competition because they had 11 years of experience and they're plug and play? Right. It's completely different. And so when I explained it to them,
how did they hear it? How did they receive it?
They received it, but it didn't make it feel any better to them. And they had to decide which narrative they were going to go with. And they stuck with the narrative that they were being done unfairly, but they were going to, muscle through it. And so I could respect that and agree to disagree. But the conversation shouldn't have even had to be had, but it did happen. And that was the optics, the optics on it. And so in those situations, just like you said, you have to let them know that they're heard. I want to be heard. Right. And if I'm wrong, that's fine. Let me know how I'm wrong, but I want to be heard. Nobody wants to feel like they're on an island or you get what you get and you don't throw a fit kind of situation. So, when I say sometimes you got to draw a happy line in the sand, going back to our original, your original example with the guy and his kids and life happening. Sometimes you for the most part, you do want that baseline expectation, that baseline system. Good systems are very, very important. They are protection. They're not limitation. They actually help everybody to know where they stand. And if this happens, this is what's going to happen to me. It doesn't catch them off guard if they get written up after being late so many times. So you've got an attendance baseline system, right? We don't, James Clear, he wrote Atomic Habits. One thing that I loved out of his book was we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I'm a firm believer. You know what I'm saying? I'm a firm believer in strong systems. So that's just a simple, that's a basic fundamental, system that should be at play in every corporation and industry.
Let me circle back, bro, because you're going on a different realm. So I'm going back to the scenario you just painted where the guy comes in and says, this guy's making more than me. I should be making what he's making. Right. Okay. And now we're because that's a real issue that happens every day in the workplace, right? With managers, with people coming in and upset about for whatever reasons, however they found out. I worked with somebody who literally opened my paycheck and then put it back. And that's how we found out. And you know the person.
Oh my gosh.
It was Mad Dog and Rudy. And it was the Rudy.
I remember.
But again, it's like, so here's what I would say. Here's how I would have handled that situation. And I think you handled it fine. And I'm glad that they heard it and they had to their credit, they had the mentality of, you know what, I'm just going to keep plugging away and do my thing. Are they still employed with you guys?
Not any longer.
Okay. Okay. Did he leave?
Actually, just because, it's funny you ask that. I went back to that person down the road and I said, listen, there was only one time in my career I asked for a raise. And that person who's still a mentor to me, I had just met them at the time. They said, I don't want to give you a raise. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it was nice talking to you. They said, well, hold on, Rocky, hold on. You don't go into retail for the starting pay, buddy. He said, you go into retail to work your way up. That's where the money comes. He said, maybe I don't want to give you a raise. He said, but maybe I want to promote you. He said, it took some courage to reach out to me. So I went back to that person and I said, I gave them that example and I said, what you don't know through this whole thing, and they're still upset about it all, I said, is I've actually been looking to move you up to a GM role, which makes a lot more than what she was wanting to make.
Right.
And, they were very grateful. I think at that point, the proof was in the pudding. I showed them that there is a level of consistency. And here was an opportunity, not chase a buck, but chase the opportunity that I was looking at for them to fill in the very near future, which they declined at some point for different reasons. But yeah.
So what you just said is where I was going to go and where I would have driven the conversation at the onset. And Jim Rohn, I love Jim Rohn. I know you listen to Jim Rohn too. And one of my favorite lessons that he teaches is he gives the example of somebody, he asks somebody, how much do you make? And the guy says, I make this much. He goes, really? Why? He goes, well, that's all they pay. He goes, no, that's all they pay you.
That's the amount of value you bring.
Right. Don't you think there's other people in the company that make more than that? Well, yeah. So then that's how much they pay you, because we get paid based upon the value that we bring. So when that conversation happens, when somebody walks into my office and says somehow they find out that somebody else is making more money than them, and now they feel justified in making the same amount, the conversation in my mind that's where I separate the line. For me, is like, we're not even talking about that person anymore, because that person is that person and that person is not you. You bring things to the table that person doesn't bring. And by the way, that person brings things to the table that you don't bring. That doesn't mean that you can't bring more. I want you to. Let's talk about where you'd like to go. What would you like to do? And that's where that conversation was with that manager. You were just talking about, I don't want to give you a raise. Maybe I want to give you a promotion, right? So how can we work on those things? I want you to make more money too. So I work for a guy right now who's really good at just cutting to the chase. It's like, he'll listen to people talk, but he has a gift in just cutting to the chase. Like, what does all this mean? Right? Sometimes we get hung up on the nuances and the emotions, but he tends to not. He tends to go, okay, like what are we really asking here? And he gets to the root cause of what the question. He's good at that, and I enjoy being a part of those kinds of conversations, even if I'm just a fly on the wall, because that helps, right? To not get tangled in the weeds of things. Like, so what? And he'll always say, so what we're saying here really is ABC, and it's always cutting right to it. So when somebody's coming in saying, this guy or this lady's making more money than me, I need to be making as much as they are because they do the same thing I do, then we need to be able to cut ties with that person being a part of the conversation anymore. And that's my responsibility. That's your responsibility. That's the leader's responsibility, because the value that they bring has nothing to do with the value that you bring. You're a valuable asset to us. And so I would go right to, first of all, I'm grateful that we're having this conversation. I'm glad that you felt comfortable enough to come into the office and share with me how you felt. Because let's cut to the chase. That's what this is about. You don't see me in the same way you see them. Well, I'll be damned, I'm gonna make you see me. Right? So they walked in. Now, how they do it is important, but just the fact that they felt comfortable coming in is more important. Right? So let's, especially if you've invested in this employee for a matter of months to years to sometimes decades.
Sure.
Right? You're going to watch your investment walk right out the door, but forget that. Let's go back to the authenticity piece. This person should be a friend of yours.
That's right.
This person is working with you every day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever. So they're part of your circle. And if you're going to let them go, then man, you better make sure that there's something, that you did everything you could and it wasn't a game of emotion and tit for tat. Right. So number one, thank you for coming in and sharing with me how you feel. Number two, you do bring a lot of value to this company and I see it. Here's some of the things that I see that you do really, really well and I appreciate. I'll go to that. Here's some of the things that I would like for us to work on, but I want to know more about where you see yourself. Like, what would you like to do? Not just, I want to make more money, which I do too. but now that comes down to the question I have, what can I do to bring more value to move myself up, right? To help get the attention of others. And so to me, that's where the conversation goes, as opposed to, well, this person makes this much money. There's different, and you're not wrong in any of the things that you said, right? You're right. There's different variables that come into play. But to me, that's getting tangled in the weeds a little bit that I don't want to get tangled in. Because sometimes you give them more ammunition.
It's true.
Right, to make their point. And I don't want to go there because the value that they bring is exclusive and unique to theirs. And it shouldn't be a matter of you're not bringing as much value as them. That shouldn't be the conversation, because that'll only make your job even more difficult. It should be, you know what? I'm grateful that you were having this conversation. Thank you for being comfortable enough to come in. And I understand your frustration. Let's talk about it a little bit and then go from there, right? Because again, now you're making an ally. You're getting that authenticity piece, right? You're buying in there. They're seeing that you care. They're feeling that you care instead of you going on the defense as to, well, that person's, and you, right, which is the natural reaction.
Absolutely.
I wasn't expecting this.
Because a lot of times it's not even about the money as much because we can never have enough. A lot of times it's what you said. It's, am I heard? Do you really see what the value that I've been bringing? How hard I work? Am I invisible? And that in itself is a lot of times the underlying, what's in the subtext, you know what I mean? The intangibles of the conversation. Like, as you put it, cutting to the chase is pushing aside all of the nonsense, the trivial many, the minutia, and focusing on the critical few. What's really going on here? And that's why it's so important to let them be heard. It's not a patronizing thing. It's because there's something to get to the bottom of, and it's either they're never going to be happy, they're a flight risk, and the grass is always going to be on the greener on the other side, or like you said, in this instance, you've invested in them. It would be a waste of an investment to throw the baby out with the bathwater, when really they just need to be heard and know that you are doing everything you can for them. And if there's something more they need to do, let them know. Or if it's a matter of position, if they need to have a career path, well, look, I want you to make more money, like you said, and so let's come up with a 5-year career path. Let's put you on an IDP, an individual development program, and let's get you there. But I can't just snap my fingers and give you more money. And then they realize.
And it's an opportunity, I think, too, to paint the bigger picture for them, right? Because again, it's an opportunity to say, listen, part of my responsibility is to put our place in position to be able to go and ask for more money, not just for you, but for all of us. So for us to be able to go and ask, we have to be positioned to be able to, because if we're losing money, if we're not hitting what we need to hit, then it puts us with no leverage. So we go in, hey, I want to say, hey, my buddy here deserves a raise. And they go, for what? Based on what? We're like, not, I can say, well, he's a great guy and he works hard, and and they're like, yeah, but we're moving backwards. So it kind of gives us an opportunity to set the table. It's like part of our responsibility is to help him get there. And that's going to require us working together. One, what would you like to be doing more of? Here's some of the things that I think that you're really great with. What do you think? What would you like to be doing more of? What would you like to be doing less of? Getting them a part of this, and it's you control the conversation, you
Yes.
control this, and so then it becomes an ending where you're like, how do you end it? Well, that's how you end it. It's like, I promise you this, I'm going to do everything that I can to put us in that position to get you as much as I can, because you deserve it. Yeah.
Right.
But what I need from you is to give us, like you said, give me a plan, give me some ideas of what you would like to be doing more of. And let's work together towards that. If there's things that you're doing now that you don't necessarily enjoy doing, well, I understand, because guess what? If I'm having to do things that I don't necessarily enjoy doing, I don't know how much longer I want to do it either. Right. So and I would say that because that's the piece that's frustrating the person enough too. Right. So it's like, maybe there's underlying issues. You remember I used to give you this example of our friend Alec, and he called me one time from the beach house and his wife was screaming at him. And did I tell you this story?
Refresh my memory.
His wife was screaming at him, and I'm like, dude, are you okay? He goes, yeah, we're at the beach house. And I'm like, you're at a beach house and she's screaming at you? You should be having fun. He goes, no, you don't understand. I'm like, what? What's going on? He goes, I used the wrong fork. I'm like, what?
What?
I'm like, what are you? And she's still screaming. I'm like, dude, are you safe? Like, do you need to?
I remember you said, bro, it's not about the fork.
Yes. It's not about the fork, bro. Not about, yes. It's like, no, man, it is about the fork, because, it's her mom's and dad's place. And they said that, we're not supposed to use the good silverware. We use this silverware whenever we come. And she saw that I'm using the good. I'm like, dude, it is not about the damn fork.
It's not about the fork.
There's something going on that she's upset about. And this was just the straw that broke the fork that broke the camel's back. I'm like, you need to,
That's right.
I'm like, you need to dig in, bro. Find out what's going on, to where you guys are at the point now to where, emotion is so heightened over silverware. Yeah. This goes well beyond that. So, I mean, again, going back around, it's like, maybe there's something else that's triggering this employee beyond just this person's making more money than me.
There's always
and that pisses me off.
There's always a fork.
Yeah. So, but that's our job. That's the authenticity piece. I think that is so hard to teach, because, right. It is one of those things where it does take effort to not get emotionally entangled in the web they're trying to create.
That's the truth. Like you said, getting stuck in the weeds. And what you did there in that example, and just like the previous examples, you drew a happy line in the sand.
Yeah.
You reset, you reconditioned, you got aligned, and you got their buy-in, and you're both on level ground, like you said, to move forward in an effective manner. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was good. So
bro, in law enforcement, going back to empathy, they make the officers get shot with the taser.
I remember this was a piece that you spoke about, right?
Yes, because they've got to know what it does to the human body to understand.
Yes, before you put somebody through that same trauma.
Exactly. Yeah. So empathy, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if it's even in our own households, empathy is always at play.
Yes. Work life, personal life. It's all, who you are there is who you are here, and who you are here is who you are there. You're the same person. So
how you do anything is how you do everything.
How you do anything is how you do everything. So no, this was listen, I don't know if this is going to be our first episode, but it sure felt right. I enjoyed your perspective in the conversation. I think it was a very real scenario.
Likewise, bro.
That managers go in. I want to share this with you too, because I thought that this was kind of cool. When I was, we were going back and forth with names.
Yeah.
You'll probably laugh when you see this thing. I'll just show it to you.
That is too funny, man.
Two bosses walk into a podcast. I mean,
that is too funny.
I don't know that that's the direction, but I thought it was another idea. It was kind of funny.
That. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's too good.
And do you notice, like in the upper right, can you see the logo is kind of there?
I do.
I can change it to that too.
I do.
This is a Rocklen.
I like that.
So, I thought that was funny.
You mentioned something that I almost forgot about. You said you needed to go for a walk after you got frustrated in that situation with your boss.
My employee. No, he's an employee. Yeah.
And it reminded me, there are two people that were very effective at what they did. One was a very effective leader that did the same. Whenever they would get frustrated, whenever they would get brain fog, they would go for a walk. And that was Steve Jobs. He would just go for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
and decompress, air out.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally, I think that's why a lot of people smoke, and they could, and I've said to people who have told me they want to quit, I think there's more. I think that's the fork, right? I don't say that to them. I'm saying that to you because in lieu of the conversation. But the bigger issue is when they smoke a cigarette, what are they doing, bro? They're stepping outside, right? They're getting away from it for a second. They're allowing their brain to zamboni and reset. They're taking in deep breaths into the diaphragm. Yeah. And obviously the body likes the stimulant, but doesn't like the toxins.
Interesting comparison. Yeah.
I've told it in line with what we were talking about. One size fits all. That it's why they call it situational leadership. I don't allow for breaks other than legitimate breaks.
Right.
But it's become this accepted thing in our society that people can take a smoke break. So I've had to put limitations on it because you got this thing that's not going away, and I've tried to mitigate it, right? Just limit it as much as possible. And then with those people who are trying to quit, I will let them step outside for just a moment, because it's not somebody who is going into worse patterns by breaking away from being productive and stepping outside for just a moment, which like we said, if you do it for one, you got to do it for all. If they needed that, sometimes they do need to step outside and break away for a second. I'm not going to fault them for that.
Right.
But these guys who are smoking, they're stepping outside. I'm okay with them stepping outside for a moment without the cigarette to see if that works too, to just step away and reset. Like you said, although that's what breaks are for, but sometimes we need that. Another person that did that other than Steve Jobs was Albert Einstein. He would, when he would get hung up on a problem, when he would get stuck, he would play the violin and just turn it off. Right. And so it's a very productive and proven tried and true method. And when you think about the adverse, effect, when we try to force the square peg in the circle hole, and it's like we're beating our head against the wall. Right. So I think that's a very mature approach when we do feel stuck. And we have to, even as leaders, be able to do that, to be able to slow down, to speed up, to make good decisions. Right.
No, well put. I love the example and the analogy with the smoke break, inhaling, just resetting, taking a deep breath and just, so no, it's all good stuff, bro. I mean, I think that conversations like this, I think will be valuable. I think that when we do the next one, I think you should probably put Rocky or Rock. And I should just probably put Len. The Spark Greatness host thing is just because it was left over from my last platform. So I'll get rid of that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just makes more sense to be consistent with the logo and the name.
That's a good idea.
We didn't get to talk about anything else that we were going to talk about, but that's okay because it'll be content for future shows. I think that we just need to stay focused on, we kind of happened upon this topic about, situations where you're making, having these conversations with an employee coming in saying, hey, I want X amount of dollars. I mean, it's funny because I have the same conversation with my kids when we're talking about what they're working jobs, and it's like, listen, you get paid by the value that you bring. So stop thinking in terms of what you're making in an hour. I told Avi happened to bump elbows with the president and CEO of Best Western International during her first day at internship.
That's amazing.
It was super cool because she didn't know the entrance. She didn't know how to get in.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of funny because guy's name is Larry, and I read all these articles about him in Forbes magazine, and very, very, from what I saw, a really solid leader of people.
Yeah.
So she's trying to find the entrance. She can't find the entrance. She sees him and she goes, excuse me, sir, could you help me find the entrance here? I'm trying to get in. He goes, are you one of the interns? And she goes, yeah. She goes, my name's Avi. He goes, hi, Avi, my name is Larry. I'll help you. Come on in. And so Larry not only shows her where the door is, but he literally escorts her to where she's going to be set up, like by her cubicle area, the little cubicle farm where the marketing teams are. And so now here comes Avi, first day interning with the president, CEO of the company, escorting her right up to the department.
Amazing.
And she had no idea, right? And so they're all they're all like going, "Oh my God, it's Larry," right? And so Avi's like, "Hi, my name is Avi," and they're like looking at Larry like, "Oh, it's Larry," right? Like, and so he walks off, says, "Avi, it's so great to meet you. I'm sure you're going to do wonderful, and thank you so much. If you ever need anything, my office is just down the hall." Blah 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 blah.
Beautiful.
So, but it was really cool because after he left, everybody's like, "Do you know who he is?" And she's like, "Yeah, I just saw him in the parking lot, and he was like, his Larry." And she goes, "Larry is the CEO of the company." So when he is. So when she came home and told me that story, I'm like, "Sweetheart," I'm like, "you need to make sure you keep touch with your new friend Larry." I said, because he's somebody that it will be so valuable for you, not just in this position, but in any position you will ever go into in any level of life that you walk into, whatever 100%. The career choice is. He's a solid leader. You made a good impression on him already. Continue that. Even if it's just, "Hey, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you so much. I must admit, I was overwhelmed when they told me that you are actually the president and CEO of the company, but that means even more to me that you took the time to," you know what I mean? Just continue to cultivate,
build that, cultivate that connection. Yes.
Yeah. And she did. I mean, and they, at one point, they were asking, what it is, if you have any questions about the company and how things operate. And she's like, "I want to know what Larry does." And so she's like, she wanted to shadow Larry. And so they got to connect. So I think they're actually going to offer her a position because she's been interning and they kept extending it and she's paid internship. But she's not just, it's the headquarters for BW, across the country and international. They also have resorts in other parts of the world. Wow. And so obviously bilingual. So it's a good opportunity for her. But I guess my point in sharing that with you, aside selfishly, because she's family and your family, right, is just the idea of recognizing those opportunities, right, and maximizing on those opportunities from those relationships from people that are so much smarter than you or me.
It is, opportunities.
Yeah,
man. That's it. If we focus on growth and chasing opportunity, then just like in Avi's situation, she's going to be too great to be ignored, period. The opportunities will come looking for her.
Yeah. Stand out.
Exactly.
Not because you're trying to stand out, but because you're actually a student of whatever it is that you're doing and you want to learn. Right. Mediocrity can be your best friend in that sense, because there's a lot of people that stop at mediocrity. If you can go a little past it.
100%. Nowadays, and I heard someone talking about this. I can't remember if it was a TED Talk or what, but they were saying that it's never been easier. I think it was Gary Vee, come to think of it.
Yeah.
And it's never been easier because everybody's so weak, he was saying. Everybody's, it's the world's full of snowflakes and everybody's so complacent with being mediocre. It's never been easier. You just got to care. And
that's it. Sometimes that's the difference, right?
That's the difference. That's the one thing.
A little more than the next guy.
Yes. When I'm looking for people, that's what I'm looking for. Like, your foundation, Spark Greatness. One of the reasons I love it so much is because it's such a first principle. I look for that spark in people because I can teach them other things. I can't teach them to care.
Right. I think it was Billy Joel was one of my favorite stories where he was being interviewed with somebody who was just falling all over himself, talking about, you're such a musical genius and composing the music and your lyrics and your voice is just, you're so brilliant in your and just decades and you're a legend and just going on. And Billy Joel is always uncomfortable when it comes to that. And they're like, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel about your body of success over the years and decades? And he's like, and he thought about it. He goes, in his typical New York fashion, he's like, he goes, I don't know. He goes, I don't even think I'm a singer. He goes, I'm just a piano player who played pretty good, tried to sing a little bit. He goes, but I just tried to emulate the singers that I liked. He goes, at the end of the day, he goes, in a world that seems to be drowning in mediocrity, if you go a little bit above that, I guess I'm a genius.
I remember that. I remember that interview.
I guess
that's exactly right. That's exactly
if mediocrity is the baseline, I guess I'm pretty brilliant. So anyway, I thought that was such a good example. But all right, bro, listen, I love the time that we spent together and I want us to be able to do more. We will. Forgive me, I'm not feeling the greatest right now, but even in spite of it, I thought that there was a lot of gems in this conversation. Yeah. I did record it. It's about 48 minutes. So I kind of have to figure out how we want to do this. I envision that we'll do like little video clips here and there that we can kind of share on LinkedIn and YouTube. We'll create a YouTube channel. Sure. But the audio form, the long form will just be audio only. Is how I envision it, but I want to do a little bit more digging and seeing what the easiest approach is. Because if I'm honest with you, the size of the videos can be cumbersome because I'm trying to edit And I'm not as astute in this StreamYard editor yet that I need to be to make it happen. So it'll be a work in progress, but you know what else? It's like, we don't have to launch it until we have several episodes in the can anyway.
And it'll be fun either way.
Yeah. Just to kind of connect. So let's maybe try to make it a Sunday thing. Are you cool with that?
Absolutely.
Let's go for that. How's the family? Rest of the family's all good?
Doing good.
Okay, man. Proud of you, bro.
Proud of you.
Thank you, man. Send my love to everybody, okay?
Okay, likewise. Love you.
Love you, man. Bye-bye.